Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much and welcome to our another college admission trends series of finding the best fit college or colleges. So I'm Janetta Lomia, the District Director of Guidance and Testing for the school. And once again, we are welcoming all of you to one of many school counseling programs that we have this year for you. And so tonight I'm going to introduce our very well-known speaker. We are so grateful to have Mr. Rob Franick with us. He just shared that he actually, this was recently his 37th time appearing in the Today Show to discuss about matters with regards to, college admission trends and what's happening, whether it is, getting into to your dream school, whether it is the upcoming digital SAT, which is, something that we had discussed in a previous workshop a couple of weeks ago with the Princeton Review. And so tonight I'm just going to hand the microphone to Rob so he can share his knowledge, expertise, and he's so charismatic, he's so positive, and I do appreciate that because I tend to emulate that as well. So Rob is the editor-in-chief at the Princeton Review and is an expert in higher education. He has delivered over 50 college and high school lectures annually. I think that's probably an understatement. His 26-year career has encompassed roles as a college admissions administrator, an educator, a publisher, a lecturer, an author, and I guess we have a celebrity in our hands. So please help me welcome Mr. Rob Franick.
Thanks. Ms. Alameda, thank you. I'm totally going to skip therapy now. I'm feeling so good. Folks, it's good to see everybody here. Everybody hear me okay? Excellent, excellent. Folks, Ms. Alameda, thank you again for inviting me in today. We did a similar talk last year, but it was only virtual, so I'm happy to be here in person. And I have no recycled slides from last year, so this will be all new. And I should also mention just a couple of housekeeping things. You can feel free to furiously take notes on this entire presentation deck, but you needn't take a single note because I'm going to send the whole thing home with you. You'll have my contact information. You'll have Alyssa's contact information. So I'm hoping that tonight's conversation goes well beyond, thank you. Well beyond the 60 or so minutes that we'll spend together today. Now, a couple of things. I want to make sure that I do justice to this topic of finding a school that's going to be the best fit for us. Secret, there are going to be many of them, I suspect. But what I promised Ms. Alameda that we would tackle two separate questions in this quest of finding a school that's going to be the best fit for us. Number one, how do we, find schools that are going to be the best fits for us academically and campus culture and financial aid and career services? And we're going to poke at each of those things tonight. But the number two issue, and I suspect it is a dear one to folks in this room, how do we find those schools without breaking the bank to pay for them? Is this important issues to us today or not? Yes? Excellent, excellent. Folks, again, I promised one other thing to Ms. Alameda, that I would try to keep our time together as interactive and not boring as possible. So keeping true to my promise, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Fair warning, these questions are going to start off really easy, and they're going to get progressively difficult as the evening moves on. Fair enough? Excellent. Here's my first question. It is a softball question. And it's the easiest question I'm going to pitch out to you tonight. And all you need to answer this question is to simply raise your hand. And it's an appropriate question for every college-bound student, their parent, extended family members in this room. Any soul in this room can answer this question. All you need to do to answer it is to simply raise your hand. Here is the question. Please raise your hand, students, parents, extended families, if you are concerned about getting into a good college. Concerned about getting into a good college. Come on. Okay? Yeah, you could put them down. Folks, we wouldn't show up tonight if we weren't at least a little bit concerned about getting into a good college. That is an easy question. Second question, only slightly harder than the first. Also a showing of hands question. Also appropriate for every soul in this audience. Please raise your hand if you are scared, stressed, or nervous about the college process. Scared, stressed, or nervous about the college process? Folks, we're going to geek out here for a second. You're going to keep your hands up. Folks in the front, take a look at the people in the back. Folks in the back, wave to the people in the front. Okay, put your hands down. Folks, we need to know with mathematical certainty, no matter who we are, how well-intentioned, how well-educated, how thoughtful we may be around the college admission process. We are not AI in this room, we have emotions, and we are likely a little scared, stressed, and nervous. We know this, not just because of our quick straw poll here tonight. One of the things, and Jeanette knows this well, one of the things I love to do is come out and talk to students and parents. But what I really love to do is to survey college-bound students and their parents. And I'll be sharing with you, as I said, this deck, but I'll be sharing with you all of the data that underlines buttresses all of the content that we're going to be talking about tonight. So this survey that I'll be referencing liberally is called College Hopes and Worries. And it's a survey of college-bound students and their parents who went through the college process just last year. We found out that many of those students and their parents agreed on their major hopes of finding a school that's going to be the best fit for them, but they also agreed on their biggest worries and their biggest stressors around the college process. I'm not going to ask you that question yet, but we're going to serve it up in another minute. Okay, here is our first contact information question of the evening. This is a prime the pump question. What do we think? Is college worth it? I'm not going to call on people, and I also really deeply dislike it when speakers read slides to people who can full well read themselves. So I'm going to try to spare you that agony tonight. But what do we think? Is college worth it? Yes or no? Yeah. Fair enough. No? No. It depends. Depends on the cost. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the major that you're moving into, return on your investment, academic and otherwise. Yeah, absolutely. Are we moving on to a career of substance upon graduation that we actually want? Is it worth the money that we're shilling out to pay for it? Okay, fair enough. Folks, we asked this question, again, this College Hopes and Worries survey, college-bound students and their parents that went through the college process last year. We had just shy of 15,000 of them complete the survey. We asked them the same question. 99% of them said, yes, college is worth it, but it is worth it for specific reasons, and some of the reasons that you are calling out. Biggest piece of the pie, I know it's a bit of an eye chart in the back, so I am going to read that part to you. Biggest piece of the 99% of students and parents said, yes, it is worth it. 46% said, yes, it is worth it because I'm going to get a better job and have a higher income if I graduate from college. The other things are exposure to ideas, 31%, and then education, 23%. Folks, we're just going to let this kind of percolate in our heads for a second. We're going to come back to this idea of the return on your academic investment as we move on throughout the evening. Second question. College Hopes and Worries survey. As we talked about, understanding what the hopes are for students and parents, kind of an easy discussion to get them there. But more importantly, if we can understand where students are nervous, where their parents are worried, where families are stressed about the college process, what do we think the answer is to this? What is the biggest fear that students and their parents have around the college process, around college admission? Being in debt, money. Yeah, anybody else? Getting things in on time. Are you going to miss it? Are you going to screw it up if you miss the November 1st deadline for early decision? Right? You're going to hobble your, yeah, exactly, November 1st today. Yeah. Folks that named out debt and cost of college, this has been resoundingly consistent as the biggest fear for students and parents. And the college process, not just this past year, but now for the seventh consecutive year, that students and parents are most concerned about debt around college. Now, a very close, so assuming too much debt to pay for college, the first one. The second one was students would get into their first choice schools, but families wouldn't be able to pay for it. So right around the idea of college costs and assuming too much debt. Okay, we're going to just assume tonight that college costs and assuming too much debt is a near universal fear, no matter how financially blessed or challenged we may feel in this room. We're going to assume that this is eerily consistent for students and parents across the globe. We ask those students and parents, we understand you're nervous about debt and college costs, but what do you actually think college is going to cost? And again, I don't like to read slides to people, but let's just look at the first two biggest buckets, right? So we had out of 15,000 folks, 37% said it's costing $100,000 or more, 26% said $75,000 to $100,000. Folks, we have our next set of questions. My students, I call these to my students ice breaker questions, but my students call them ice smasher question. So here's our first Ice Smasher question. I beg you not to Google this. Let's just test the college knowledge in our head. The first question is around total cost of attendance. And this is the big four: tuition, room and board, fees, and books. Folks, what does it cost on average to attend 1 year of public college or university average across the states? Now, this is the big four, but for public schools, it's going to be in-state tuition, room and board, fees, and books. What do we think? Shout it out from your seats, please. $30,000. 30? 36? 36? 40,000. I'm sure, sir. You said something? No, okay. Go ahead, shout it out. 25,000. Anybody else? About 30. Anybody else? Tuition, in-state tuition, room and board, fees, and books. 30? Yeah? Okay. Well, listen. Ms. Alamia, you have done your job clearly, because these folks are all right in the camp here. Undergraduate tuition for public schools average across the states this year, $23,250. So this feels good. Let's feel the gentle solace as this washes over us. About $24,000 is about what we can expect to pay for 1 year of public school averaged across the states. But let us not stop there. Let us look, folks, to the sometimes, and I'll say it out loud, heart-stoppingly expensive side of the fence. Tuition, room and board, fees, and books for 1 year of private college or university. What does it cost? Shout it out from your seats, please. 90. We have an NYU student here, fourth row. 90,000. Anybody else? $75,000. Anybody else? $80,000. $60,000. Who said 100? $100,000. $75,000. Last bids. Tuition, room and board, fees, and books on tuition, room and board, fees, and books on average for private schools. All right, so we have a low of about 60-ish, a high of 100. There'll be more than gentle solace on this one. Tuition, room and board, fees, and books for 1 year of private college, $53,430. Oh, how can this be, right? Here's the thing. It is not unreasonable that we should shout out those loftier numbers, right? NYU this year is $83-ish thousand a year, $92,000. I'm working with 2021 numbers, yeah. $92,000, right. So many of the schools in our universe might be charging those loftier sums. And even for the $100,000 bid, University of Chicago announced less than a year ago that within the next 2 to 3 academic years, they would likely top the $100,000 mark per academic year that a student is in school. So again, it's not unreasonable that we shout out those loftier numbers, but our job tonight in this kind of El Dorado that we're driving at, this idea of finding a school that's going to be the best fit for us, we have to poke at things that make us nervous. We have to bring them up to the light so that we can talk about them with granularity of data so that we know on average about $24,000 and about $54,000. You had a question. Oh no, no, it is inclusive. Tuition, room and board, fees, and books. It's the big four for each. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and it does feel a little separate. You're right, but when we think about it, again, particularly that we're here where we are, and we have so many different schools in the tri-state area. So many of those schools have high sticker costs. So again, our average that we might think of in our heads is a little loftier. But again, thinking broadly about schools across the country, these are the numbers. Okay, how about this? We said before, biggest fear for students and parents is assuming too much debt. What is this number? The average amount of student debt that a student who graduated college in May or June of 2023, just a couple months ago, what is the average amount of indebtedness? $100,000. Anybody else? I'm sorry? $100,000 for these three folks. Anybody else? $120,000. The average amount of student debt that a student graduated college just this past year, they graduated with this amount of debt. Anybody else? $50,000. Last minute bids? Okay, here we go. This is going to be super revealing. When we think about it, for public and private schools together, $29,400. Again, it is not unreasonable that we should shout out 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 plus $1,000, because folks, wherever we receive our news from, wherever we're thinking and hearing and reading and watching stories of students who graduate school with ballooned or ballooning debt, I think the most crushing of these stories, and Ms. Alameda and I have talked about this before, are those students that did not succeed. So they did not earn an undergraduate degree. You'll hear this term, they did not persist. So they don't have a college degree, but they have representative debt for the 1, 2, or 3 years that they actually spent in school, but they don't have a college degree for show for it. But again, these stories, although true, our job tonight, again, is to poke at things that make us a little nervous in this idea of finding a school that's the best fit. On average, students will graduate with about $30,000 in debt. Okay, one more financial aid thing, we're gonna move on. The amount of student debt that exists. And folks, before you shout this one out, I'm gonna give you one hint here. This is a cartoonishly large number. What do we think? 1 trillion, you were following directions, sir. That is a cartoonishly large number. Anybody else? $1 trillion so far. 3 trillion is more cartoonish. Anybody else? 2 billion's a little light. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Well done, first of all, first two bids. Right, nearly right in the middle, $1.7 trillion. Folks, again, we would be AI if we didn't feel a little nervous that right now, $1.7 trillion exists in outstanding student debt. Here's the thing. And Jeanette and I have known each other for a long time. We've talked about this in the past. I have a lot of students that come through the Princeton Review channel. It is 1 out of every 2 students that applies to college in any given academic year, so I'm grateful that many of those folks have placed their faith in us. But trying to explain to that massive amount of students and their parents, how do you not feel intimidated when you think about $1.7 trillion? Here's the thing. Here's the only way I think I've been minorly successful in making this feel less stressful. That $1.7 trillion is not simply inclusive of 4-year undergraduate, not-for-profit colleges and universities that the vast majority of students in this room will ultimately go to. It takes into account every student that had applied, that took out $1 to afford the following: law school, business school, medical school, every grad arts and science program that exists, as well as every undergrad or graduate school that is completely online or undergrad or graduate school that is completely for profit. If we just took out traditional brick and mortar, law school, business school, medical school, and grad arts and sciences, that number comes down by 40% at minimum. It is still a lofty number. From when to when? I hear you. I'll repeat the question for the crowd. The question was, what are the dates that this is inclusive of? Yeah. I should know this answer, but I don't. But I'll find out. Alyssa, I know Alyssa's here, so I'll just take just a couple quick notes so I'll remember. But I'll find out the answer. Yeah. But that's a good question. It's a good question. But here's the thing. If we come down by 40%, it's still a lofty number. But again, exiting this auditorium tonight, you'll never likely be able to unhear the $1.7 trillion. You're going to get this answer right away. But the truth is you're going to think, hopefully, critically about it, right? You're going to know it's inclusive of many things, not just college degrees. Questions on college costs before we move on. Don't feel like you're interrupting me. You have a question, just shout it out. Okay. How about this question? Isn't there one best fit school for everyone? We kind of hit on this at the beginning. What do we think? No? Anybody else? No? Definitely not. Definitely not. How could it be? I mean, how could it be? There's 3,000 plus 4-year colleges in the U.S. alone. How could there just be one best fit school, for one student? And that doesn't make much sense. We understand that we're going to have a broad definition of fit. But here's the thing. I teach a lot of students at Princeton Review. The biggest mistake that I have seen my own students and respectfully their parents make is that they think about the college process in the wrong way. They think about the college process as a game of winners and losers, right? If the gentleman in the sweatshirt, the gray sweatshirt, what's your first name? Mark, if you get into one of these 3 schools up here, these 3 top schools up here, Mark, then you won. But if the rest of us get into any of the other nearly 3,000 4-year colleges in the U.S. alone, then we lost. And I think that there's a better way to go about college admission than a game of winners and losers. But I need to know that while I have you here for the next 47-ish minutes, that you are willing to think differently about college admission for 47 minutes. Are you willing to do it, yes or no? Yes. Excellent. If you are truly willing to think in a different manner about college admission, I'm going to tell you 2 facts that I'm convinced you will hear few other places. First fact, it has never ever been easier to get into college than it is today. Second fact, it has never ever been harder to get into college than it is today. Who is this admission quack that Miss Alamia asked to come and lead our conversation tonight? How could it be both ridiculously easy and amazingly difficult to get into college? Folks, we're going to try to prove out my completely unscientific theory, but we're going to do it together. Here's the assignment. For every student listening to my voice, if you could take out either some of the Princeton Review propaganda, if you have your phone on you, you could just put it into the notes section. You could send it to me on Instagram. I don't care how you jot this down, written or typed in. But for every student in the room, I want you to type in or write down the names of 3 colleges or universities that you would love to see yourself at as a college freshman, with these 2 caveats. Doesn't matter if you don't have a prayer in heaven to get in that school academically, or $2 saved in the bank to pay for it. So it doesn't matter about academic admission, doesn't matter about financial aid. Parents, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to channel your son or daughter who is sitting next to you, or who you are dutifully representing from home, and I want you to write down 3 schools that you would love to see them at as a college freshman. Doesn't matter about money, doesn't matter about academic acceptance. I am going to give you 27 seconds to write down these schools. Ready? Go. Any school is fair game, public or private, large or small, urban, suburban, or rural. Yeah, any school is fair game. Folks, the clock is ticking. You have 11 seconds, 10 seconds. These could be religious schools, they could be secular schools, they could be co-ed institutions, they could be single-sex institutions, they could be international schools, let's think broadly. They could be for-profit schools. Heresy. Online schools, of course. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I want you to keep your pens in your hands or your fingers on your phones, and I want you to cross off or erase the following schools. So if I say a name of a school and it happens to be on your list, you must cross it off or erase it. You got it? Okay. For students and parents, same for everybody. I want you to cross off first every Ivy League school. Couple of groans. Okay, that's 8 schools. We know what they are. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Dartmouth, University of Pennsylvania, Cornell. You know all these. 8 schools. We have 3,000 to go. We're going to cross off some local schools. We're going to cross off LIU, both campuses. We're going to cross off another Long Island school. Oh, Hofstra, of course, yeah. Okay, we won't pick on Long Island too much, but those 2 schools on Long Island will move into the city. We're going to hit NYU. We already got LIU, Brooklyn downtown. We're going to hit SUNY, Polytechnic, yeah, Poly. We're going to hit Brooklyn College and Hunter College. We already got Columbia because it's an Ivy. We're going to hit Fordham. We're going to move on from New York City. We're going to move to Westchester. We're going to hit SUNY Purchase. We'll move on from Westchester. We're going to move to New Jersey. We already hit Princeton because it's an Ivy. I went to college in New Jersey. We're going to cross off my school, Drew University. We're going to move on from New Jersey. We're going to move to New England. We're going to start in Connecticut. We're going to hit University of Connecticut, Fairfield University, Sacred Heart University, and Connecticut College. That's 4 from Connecticut. We're going to move to Boston. We're going to hit Boston College, Boston University, MIT, Northeastern. We're moving from Boston. We're going to hit a couple of schools in Maine, Bates, Bowdoin, and Colby. 1 school in New Hampshire, which we already got because it's Dartmouth. We're going to move to the Middle Atlantic state. Pennsylvania. We're going to hit Lehigh, University of Pittsburgh, Penn State, and Bucknell. We're going to move on. We're going to start in D.C. We're going to hit Georgetown, George Washington, and American. We'll hit University of Maryland and University of Virginia and Virginia Tech. James Madison University, JMU. We're going to move down to the south. We're going to hit University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. We're going to hit Duke and Emory. We're going to hit 1 school in Florida, University of Miami. 1 school in New Orleans, of course, Tulane. A couple schools in Chicago. We're going to hit Northwestern, University of Chicago. That's it. University of Wisconsin, University of Michigan. 2 schools in Texas, Rice University and University of Texas at Austin. 3 schools in California, and then we're going to be done. We're going to hit the most popular school in the land. This is good extra points. This school in California received more college applications, not only this year, but for the last 3 consecutive years than any other state in the contiguous United States. What is the most popular school in the land? UCLA. That's well done, yeah. First right off the bat. 149,000 applications. Now, that same number in 2019 was 123-ish thousand. So it's skyrocketed since at UCLA, 27 to 29. Yeah, it's significant. It's significant. But I mean that undergrad, and for the graduate schools and professional schools, it's more. If UCLA is on your list, let's remove it. We're going to hit University of California, Berkeley. We're going to hit Stanford. We're going to hit Pomona. Oh, one more, USC, University of Southern California. That's about 30 schools. Okay, folks, that's about 30 schools we named off. Pens down, hands off your phones. I'd like to see a showing of hands who in this room, students or parents, still has 3 schools left on their list. I'm going to call that 3. Okay, how about 2 schools? 4. 2 schools left on your list. 2 schools. Okay. How about one measly school left on your list? Okay. Folks, we have a problem here. Let's recall our exercise. We said it has never been easier to get into college than it is today, and it's never been harder to get into college than it is today. It's never been easier to get into college than it is today because there are 3,000 plus four-year colleges in the U.S. alone, but it has never been harder to get into college than it is today because we are all trying to go to the same 25 or 30 schools. We're going to let this wash over ourselves. I love to do this exercises with large groups of students and parents, but I got to do the same exercise with those 15,000 folks that I was referring to on this College Hopes and Worries survey. So we asked them the same question. What would be your dream school if academic admission and cost were no longer issues? So I'll read to you what students said first, or we'll reveal what students said first and then what their parents said. So students said if cost and academic admission were no longer factors, they would go to the following: MIT, Stanford, and Harvard, and their parents would want them to go to Princeton, Harvard, and Stanford. What a thoughtfully conceived list. Folks, these are glorious schools. One of my jobs that I love to do with Princeton Review, I literally write college guidebooks, and it pains me to cross off those 30 or so schools that I named off just a couple months ago, because they're all awesome schools, right? They're glorious schools. But my point here, and we can pick on Stanford. Stanford this year, or pardon me, for fall 2023, these numbers are reported, 58-ish thousand applications, 58,000 applications, pardon me, to Stanford last year, 3.8% of which were actually admitted. So 3.8% of students were admitted out of that 58,000. Those are glorious students, indeed, that were admitted. But my point is, and I think you're painfully getting this, is that this idea of fit still has to fit into what we have in our heads, which is brand and the perception of that. Right? If I get into one of these glorious schools, or some of the glorious schools that made it onto your list of 3, that I or my kids are going to have a charmed or a more charmed or a more blessed life than a student who doesn't get into those schools. And Jeanette and I know this, I visit more college campuses than I am convinced any other person on the planet. And if I am not hearing in the first couple of minutes on a college campus about what students are doing about fit, right? Finding fit in any number of ways, besides just brand and perception, then I'm a bit suspect. And our job tonight is to poke at some of those taboos, right? To poke at some of those taboos and then hopefully exiting this auditorium thinking broadly about the schools that can be a fit for us. Now, listen, I tell all of my students, and this is a very simple 4 buckets of fit, right? Obviously, you want a school that you're going to apply to be an academic fit. This is clear. You want to be challenged and engaged in the classroom. A campus culture fit. Now, this one might feel a little less clear. You know, campus culture fit in my mind, and we can go back and forth on the definition. Do students at that school that you're applying to, do they lean to the left or right politically? You know, maybe that's important to you, maybe it's not. Are students at that school religious, or are they not religious? Maybe that's important to you, maybe it's not. Are queer students accepted at that campus, or are they not? Does diversity exist, which we can see through plain old statistics, but do diverse students actually interact with one another? Is the food good? Are the beds comfortable? Literally, what is your life going to be like at the school that you choose, not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well? To me, we would be doing ourselves an active disservice if we didn't think now, no matter our age group, particularly for younger students and their parents in this room, about fit and that campus culture piece early on. We spent the first couple of minutes today or tonight talking about financial aid fit and some of the taboos around it, right? Folks, don't make the mistake that my own students have made, or their parents, well-intentioned as they are, which is, we'll worry about the money later. Get into school and then we'll talk about scholarships and we'll talk about money and how we're going to pay for it. The thing is, for those things, because they make us nervous, again, if we're not robots, we should have that conversation now. Just the parts of that conversation now, rather than to kick it down the line and have it at the last minute. The other part is that career services fit. And you guys hit on this at the beginning. What is going to be the return on my investment academically, choosing a major, an academic discipline that is going to pay off for me upon graduation? And what is going to be the return on my investment financially, and of course my investment academically? Again, if I'm not hearing in the first couple of minutes on any college visit that I go on about what students are doing outside the classroom to complement what they're learning inside the classroom, then I'm suspect. And the truth is, you have every right to be suspect as well, but to ask those questions about what is going to be internships and cooperative experiences and experiential learning. Then the naming kind of changes from school to school, but all means the same thing, which is, what is a student doing at NYU, not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom, to make their experiences in undergrad awesome, but then to vault them onto a career of substance upon graduation. Question on these 4 buckets of fit before we move on. Okay. How about this question? I know that many of you were here likely for the digital SAT presentation, but what do we think about this? If a school is test optional, should I still submit my scores? Yes. Why? So you feel that submitting your scores might differentiate you as a candidate than other students that withheld them. Fair enough. Anybody else? Should we always submit our test scores if a school is test optional? If they're good, yeah, we have some pragmatists in the room. Yeah, they're good. Well, here's the rule, and these are the right answers. The thing is, our SAT and ACT scores, particularly in our test optional world, they do give us the ability to differentiate ourselves, and we can think critically about these scores, right? Depending on how well you do on the SAT or the ACT, you can choose to withhold those scores with no pox on your house, and you can choose to submit them if you wish, right? And it's kind of that golden rule, that 50% mean, right? So if you're over that 50% mean, then why wouldn't you want to submit your scores? Or this is a conversation that you have with Ms. Alamia and the rest of your college counseling team. But this is a fair thing. If you're significantly under there, if you're kind of in the middle, that's a discussion again for families and for counselors. But again, the funny thing is that because so many students, particularly those students with superlative scores, over the last couple of years, pandemic and after, that only students with superlative scores were submitting their scores. So now schools in the last 4 years have become incredibly competitive, more competitive than they were in 2019 pre-pandemic, because only students with superlative scores have been submitting them. And my team is responsible for data collection at the Princeton Review. We collect data from just shy of 3,000 four-year colleges, near all of which are test optional, near all of which always report their SAT and ACT scores to us, no matter their optional status. So here's the thing. It is difficult to tell and then to strategize because schools are not so clear about the way they tell us, explain test optional. And I read a book at the Princeton Review called The Best 389 Colleges, and I asked the deans and directors of admission from those 389 schools, 300-ish of whom got back to us, all sorts of things about their classes and, AI and AP and what's going on with diversity and admissions. But for this particular question, we asked them how they were treating the SAT and ACT. And the vast majority of these schools, near all of which were on your list of 3 that I'm sure that you wrote down. But for the fall of 2023, those students who are freshmen on college campuses right now, those schools, 89% of them were test optional, but they would still consider your test scores if you submitted them. 10% are test blind or test free. So if you are applying to the UCLAs of the world, or any of the Cal States or UC's system, which is a massive system just like SUNY, those schools are completely test free or test blind. So meaning that if you, Mark, submitted your SAT or ACT scores, they'd have to disregard it just at the beginning. But it is still a pretty small number of schools that are only test-free or test-blind. It's slightly declining for fall of 2024. So here's the thing. I'm going to slightly break my promise to you, and I'm going to read the quotes from 3 deans and directors of admission, all of whom are trying to give clarity around their test optional status. So I picked 3 schools from across the country. Scripps College, which is a fabulous school. It's 25 miles outside of Los Angeles. There are 5 schools on one 200-plus acre campus. You'll recognize these names: Scripps, Pomona, Pitzer College, Claremont McKenna, and then their engineering school, which is called Harvey Mudd. And these are glorious schools. But Scripps is now permanently test optional. And the Scripps Dean of Admission has said the following: the policy to remove the requirement of submitting SAT or ACT scores will allow admission officers to identify and advocate for students with a strong academic profile who may have previously been viewed as less competitive based on their performance on a single exam. How does this make us feel? Pretty good. Yeah, Scripps is saying that you're no longer going to be judged by your SAT or ACT scores, no matter how many times you took it. This feels kind of nice. That said, Scripps was one of the schools that we just saw on the last slide, that 89% schools that said we're test optional, even permanently, but if you submit your scores, we will still consider them. Be that as it may, we'll move on. Tufts University, one of my personal favorites, 12 miles outside of downtown Boston. Tufts has said the following: they are a test optional pilot program only, so it's temporary, and Tufts Dean of Admission has said the following: we believe this policy provides students with maximum flexibility. If applicants would like us to consider their exam results as one component of their candidacy, we will do so in a nuanced and contextual way. If students choose not to submit exam results, we'll evaluate their candidacy in a nuanced and contextual way without scores. I'm just going to say this out loud. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Princeton Review. A little redundant on the nuance and contextual phraseology. But be that as it may, what Tufts is saying is kind of what you guys were saying, right? If you are pleased with your SAT and ACT scores, if you think that they are of value to differentiate you between other students in their cohort, then submit your scores. And if you don't, if you're not pleased with your scores, then exercise your test optional right to withhold them. This is clear. Last school, and I'm going to stop reading slides. Cornell University, one of the 8 Ivies, of course. Cornell is very reluctantly now still test optional temporarily. And the Dean of Admission at Cornell has said the following: we anticipate that many students who will have had reasonable and uninterrupted opportunities to take the ACT and or SAT will continue to submit results, and those results will continue to demonstrate preparation for college-level work. What do you think about that one? Ooh, bad. I mean, this to me does not feel like a bear hug of an embrace of a test optional policy. What Cornell is saying is that if you have the ability to take the SAT or ACT, then you better take it. You better take it because, in their words and not ours, it continues to demonstrate preparation for college-level work. Do I agree with this? No. Do you agree with this? Likely not. Does it matter what we agree? It does not. Sadly. But our job tonight, again, in this idea of fit, is to poke at things that make us nervous, to poke at things that feel a little wordy and a little unclear. But the truth is, it is the Wild West out there in thinking about how schools are relaying their test optional or their testing policies around the SAT and ACT and AP exams to a slightly lesser degree, and it's hard to tell. And that's why Ms. Alamia, myself, our full team at Princeton, I mean, this is one of the things that we all have an encyclopedic knowledge of, so that we can have a conversation of substance, with you guys when you question the quotes from these schools. Questions on test option before we move on. Okay. You're not going to interrupt me. You just shouted out. How about this one? I know we have some juniors that just took the PSAT in its digital format. You're going to be the Marines getting in for the March 2024 digital SAT. The SAT has become digital. Will it be easier or harder than the pencil and paper test? I am sure this is on the minds of many students, particularly juniors this year. What do we think? Easier? Same, could be. Mark, you have a question? You have an answer? Harder? Yeah. Well, listen, we're all over the place. And the truth is we don't really know, right? They'll just set out the dates for us, right? In 2022, January 2022, the College Board who creates the SAT and every one of the 38 AP exams, but creates the SAT, they said that in 2 years from now, in March of 2024, that the SAT would be changing tectonically from its pencil and paper incarnation that every parent in this room suffered through, or likely suffered through if maybe they took the ACT, but to a digital format. Now, there's been some value to that, right? The pencil and paper SAT is a 3-hour exam. The new digital SAT is a 2-hour exam. It's 2 hours and 14 minutes, but I'm not going to split hairs, but 2-ish hours. And this feels good, right? I've been teaching the SAT for a long time, and one of the biggest things that is difficult for students is that idea of testing fatigue. Focusing on an exam for 3 hours is a slog, and it's difficult, right? And 2 hours, 2 hours and 14 minutes is a significant savings, and this feels good. But the thing is that the content of the SAT is going to be near identical. Pencil and paper to digital. But the difference is going to be not only the shorter format, but the following. When I teach an SAT class, or I am teaching an SAT class, for the pencil and paper test, I tell all of my students, you earn no extra points for answering the toughest question on the SAT than you do the easiest question on the SAT. So the obvious strategy is answer all of the easy questions first, and then use your extra time and focus on the harder questions. This is clear. But this strategy kind of goes out the window because the new digital SAT will be an adaptive test, which simply means, and I'm going to move past this, simply means that in the first cohort of questions that you see on the SAT, let's say the verbal and verbal section, the writing and reading session, that in the first 25 questions, if you performed well on those first 25 questions, then the next cohort of 25 questions will award you with tougher questions than the first, mostly tougher questions. But the inverse happens as well. If students perform poorly on that first 25 questions, then the next questions that they will see in that next cohort will likely be easier than the first. Now, this is interesting because now students will earn more points for the toughest question on the SAT and fewer points for the easiest question on the SAT. That saves us 45 plus minutes, but it also adds some stress. So when I think to this question, and Mark, you said it, yes, it might be harder, but it's harder from a mental perspective because the content is eerily similar from test to test, but this idea of, am I questioning, did I perform well in that first cohort to see the tougher questions, or did I not perform well? So that's kind of the strategy that I've been teaching now on the digital SAT, is not to psych yourself out if you're feeling like you're getting easy questions from the second cohort. Okay, that was a lot of data. This all, I won't read the slide to you, but it basically says the same thing. Just to give the summary of the SAT. One last thing. If history proves true, the SAT continues to change, right? This will not be the last time that the SAT has changed, right? It's going to change in 2024. It changed in 2016. It changed in 2005. Changed in 1996. So this is consistent. The ACT is still a pencil and paper test. And if history proves true, students will do two things. They will flock to the last SAT in town that's pencil and paper, because it's the evil that you know. That's the December test. Or they will flock to the next best test in town, which is the ACT. Or, of course, they'll may choose to take the digital exam come March. And so these are the questions that you have. I know we have from freshmen through seniors in the room, or parents of freshmen through seniors. So this is a lot to noodle on. Questions on this before we move on? Yeah, I'll repeat the question, or repeat the assumption, which is the SAT and ACT. And listen, when I was looking at schools, there was a myth then, and it's a myth now, that only colleges and universities on the left and right coast took the SAT, and all schools in the great middle of the country only accepted the ACT. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now, right? So schools, colleges, and universities are completely agnostic to which test you're submitting. And the truth is, and we'll look at 2019 pre-pandemic numbers. In 2019, 2.2 million students took the SAT, 1.9 million students took the ACT, and a little over 475,000 students took both. And the truth is, there is no demerit on your application if you submit all those scores, because ultimately, a school, college and universities, are going to want to they're going to want to put you as a student in the best light. So they superscore. They take the best administrations of any number of exams that you've taken, put you in the best light, but then they also have to report out those numbers to folks like me, folks like the folks at US News, right? And you'd never want to report out your second best SAT or ACT score. So it is a value to students, and the less altruistic thing, it's a value to colleges themselves. Other question, good question. Other questions on this one? Okay. How about this? You know, we've changed all sorts of different nomenclature around the college process. What is demonstrated interest? How important is it? Let's just start with the definition. Does anybody know what a good definition is of demonstrated interest? Or you can even give me an example of how do you demonstrate interest to a school that you think might be valuable. Go ahead. Yeah, the blessing and the curse of modern times, right? So if you're looking at a school's website, or you're following a school on social, or you're doing a search, that school is going to know each of those interactions. Well, one that you've had formally with them, but know that you might be a candidate. It's an excellent example of demonstrating interest. Anybody else? Maybe more. Go ahead in the back. Booking a tour, absolutely. You know, getting on a train or in your car on a plane, booking a tour, showing up to campus, hearing the admission spiel, listening to students, and absolutely, this is an active way to demonstrate interest. Absolutely. Anybody else? Those are good examples, and you can fill in the rest. We have any number of things. Whether we visit schools in person, whether we visit them virtually for a campus open house, whether we have the opportunity to interview with that school, again, virtually or in person, doesn't matter. Any of those things, from the slightest view on a website to the most in-person kind of interview or coming out for a campus visit, all of those things are tracked, and all of value because you are demonstrated interest actively to that school. Now, colleges, go ahead, sir. Yeah. How do they find you? Or I'm sorry, repeat the question, please. Yeah, through a cover letter. How do you reach? Well, normally to get a tour at a school, this is a good question. Normally to get a tour at a school, you'd have to reach out to the admission office and book yourself a slot at that school. And so then they'll know you because they're going to get your basic contact information. There could be some more formal process at some school, but most of them are just, call them up or send them an email and then send them out. Now, that could be an individual tour on any given Saturday, right? But then there are big campus open house dates that'll be hundreds and hundreds of prospective students coming to campus, and October and November weekends, primarily November weekends, are going to be ripe with those through schools across, particularly in the Northeast. So you're getting out to school, but you're going to be visiting those schools with lots and lots of students. But the glory is that you're going to be meeting all sorts of people on campus, faculty and administrators, and of course students, more so than you'd likely meet on just a general campus tour. But yes, all of those things are true. And when we think about this stuff, when we demonstrate interest, some schools can say, we don't formally track demonstrating interest, and we don't track it on our application, which I understand and I will acknowledge is true for some schools. The vast majority of schools, however, are going to track each of those things. Because if, Mark, you and I went to the same school, and we did the same work academically, and we did pretty well on the SAT and ACT, but our scores are the same. We've done extracurricular activities, but, Mark, you have actively demonstrated interest to these schools any number of ways, and I have done none of those things. I'm literally stealth, right, under the radar. The likelihood that our applications are going to come in and they're going to choose me over you is very slim, right, because you have actively demonstrated your interest to that school, and you've actively proved out that that school is the best fit for you, right? And you've had that ability to, in conversation and all through all of these activities, that's forming your opinion of the school. So it's valuable. Question? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, of course, Jenna.
So if a lot of folks cannot go to the campus due to proximity or whatever other reasons, other commitments, sports, etc., we do have a robust program where college representatives are coming here. And so Mrs. Walsh, our college advisor, sends out notifications to our juniors and seniors to sign up and have that one-to-one conversation with that college rep. That is an absolute doable demonstrated interest opportunity. As well as we do have 2 amazing mini college fairs. We're part of a consortium. We have one in the fall, for juniors and seniors, and one in the spring for our juniors. Again, an opportunity to meet with college representatives face-to-face, one-to-one, and that's another level of demonstrated interest. ID camps for you student athletes. That's another demonstrated interest, because as a parent of a senior, I know that we had the camp ID for soccer at a school, but we also had a general tour of that school. So those things, if you can do it, great. And if not, we bring the college reps to you. We also have regional college fairs on, in Suffolk County, Nassau County, etc. So there's plenty of opportunities to have that one-to-one connection with college reps, but also demonstrate the interest that you would like to attend that university or institution. So the notifications that are coming out of the college office is through the Remind page and also the Google Classroom. So Mrs. Walsh has a dedicated Remind page for our seniors and our juniors, and so those notifications go out through those means. Hey, University of Connecticut will be here tomorrow, please, period, so-and-so, please sign up. In terms of the mini college fairs, unfortunately, because we're part of a consortium, we're limited in terms of the periods of the day, so we cannot provide like an extensive amount of time, throughout the day. So unfortunately, we cannot run it like every single like lunch period and whatnot. So I know that poses a challenge, but like I said, there are numerous opportunities, not just the mini college fair and the one-to-one college visits that you can take advantage of. But we can talk more about, exploring other options. Yeah, definitely.
You had a question in the back? Oh, can the parents receive? Yes, they can. Yeah, there you go. Well done. Yeah, excellent. Folks, I don't want to be disrespectful of your time. I have 4 more minutes here, and then I'll get you out of here. We beat this point down on demonstrating interest. It is important, and any number of ways. And I love that you brought up that stuff, Jeanette, about schools actively coming in to visit you guys here at Huntington. Okay, how many colleges should I apply to? Let's just say it out loud. What do we think? 10? 4? Ooh. 7? Okay. Okay, here's the thing. The actual number, on average, is between 6 and 8 schools. This is nationally. It's not unreasonable that you might apply to a couple more than that. There was a New York Times article that appeared last summer that profiled 10 students from across the country, all of whom had applied to between 25 and 30 schools. And if you take one bit of knowledge away from tonight, applying to 30 schools is nothing but ridiculous. Yes, applying to 30 schools in no way increases your chances of admission to any of those schools, and it does not do this, take the place of what you're doing tonight, which is showing up, asking the questions, poking at these things that make us a little nervous. But on average, 6 to 8, 4 if you can get there, it's wonderful. Here's the thing. One of the things that I tell my own students, and I'll just share this quick story with you. Biggest mistakes that I have seen my own students make in creating their list of schools, the 8 or 10 that they apply to, is the following. I'm sure that these things are not going to happen here, but I'm just going to say them out loud. Applying to that school because my boyfriend or girlfriend goes to that school. I'm sure it's not going to happen, but I'm just going to say it out. How about this one? Applying to a school because everybody from my high school tends to apply to that school. Next one. Applying to a school because it is easy to get into. Applying to a school, fourth one, and this is the last one. Applying to a school because it is hard to get into. So folks, we've poked obviously at a couple of different things tonight. I'm going to serve up this last question. I'm going to get you out of here. This idea of, isn't it, how important here, I'll just read it to you. How important is fit really in choosing a school? What do we think? Very important to me. Again, we would be doing ourselves the ultimate disservice if we don't find a school that we're not only going to be happy and challenged in academically, but the other points that we discussed. And when we think about this, and I do, again, I hate to be a product pitcher, but I am proud of these things. I do read this book for Princeton Review. I put it all online for free. You don't have to buy the book. But this idea of finding fit and giving you the actual definition, the vernacular to have a conversation around fit, to me, it doesn't matter what I think about a particular school. What my opinion is should never matter. We yield to editorially, for this book, I surveyed 170,000 current college students and asked them questions about their experiences. Academically, certainly. Are your professors good teachers? Do your professors bring the material that they teach in class to life? Are your professors accessible outside of class, or when class ends, do you never see them again? Do your professors suck all of the life out of the material that they teach in class? These things do not always make me popular with university presidents and deans of admission. But the truth is, they're not my audience. My audience is here. I want to make sure that if a school is not giving students, most students, a compelling experience academically or otherwise, then you should know about it, right? You should know about it so that you can become a primary source and ask those tougher questions when you're on a campus tour, right? Or at an open house day. And the thing is that, to me, the point of finding fit is the things that we had discussed. But we must factor in as much student opinion as possible. So when you go to a campus open house, virtually or in person, or on a campus tour, our jobs, as uncomfortable as it might make us feel at the beginning, is to interact with as many students as possible, and then to bear hug as much data from those students as we can on social or services like ours, just to figure out what students are experiencing on that classroom, outside the classroom and inside the classroom as well. That's my last part of fit. If you didn't tire of hearing me talk tonight, I have a big YouTube channel at Princeton Review. I will send you a couple links tomorrow. I'll make sure that I part with your contact information. You'll get a nice note. You'll get this deck and all the underlying data. You have been an awesome crowd. We'll get you out of here at 8 o'clock. Be well. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Excellent. Excellent. I'll be around for private questions. Get home, and I'll pass the phone to
Thank you so much, Rob. I also want to welcome you to join all of our platforms. Our Google Guidance site is also on the website, so you have a plethora of information and notifications. But every week, every Friday, the college office sends out a newsletter, and it's on the website. It's called the Friday Flyer. So when you go to Guidance and then you go to newsletters, you will see every week we have a English and a Spanish version of the Friday Flyer. And in that flyer, which is about like a 10-page document, so it's not just a single page, you'll see a lot of college opportunities in terms of open house and trips and scholarship opportunities. We do have a robust scholarship program. So I encourage you to also speak to your school counselor, Mrs. Walsh, our college advisor, with regards to the college admissions process, vocational programs in trade school, gap year, all of the post-secondary plans that we can discuss with you, as well as scholarship opportunities. So thankful for you to be here tonight. Thank you and have a great night.